Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. So excited for this panel on community-driven climate solutions towards climate justice. Really excited about the panel that we have here. Unfortunately, one of our panelists listed, Jacob, was not able to make it, so that's why you only see 4 beautiful faces here, but I'm still really excited about this dialogue. Quick plug before we get started, you should all be very familiar with the WOVA Q&A function at this point, but please drop your questions into the app. And then I'll come back up in the last 15 minutes to ask kind of the top most asked questions. So ask your questions, vote for the ones that you think are really good questions that you want to see answered. And off to our wonderful moderator, Jamie.
Thanks, Sophia. Welcome, everybody. Come on in. We got an intimate crowd, so if you can move up a little closer for the Q&A, maybe consider moving up a table. Thank you to everyone for saying no to Alice Waters and being here instead. You picked right, because we got the new Alice Waters right here.
That's not true.
Alice literally looks up to Andie because she's so tall. But yeah, you'll hear more about Andie and everybody else's work in a minute. So my name is Jamie Stark. I work at REDF. It's a strangely named foundation at Roberts Economic Development Fund. And we work with social enterprises around the country like Farming Hope, Homeboy Industries, Goodwill, that do paid job training for adults with barriers like incarceration, homelessness, substance abuse disorder. And I actually started one of those nonprofits years ago, Farming Hope, in San Francisco. Make sure you stop by if you want to volunteer or go to one of their ticketed dinners if you're in town. So they do culinary job training. I'll let Andie explain in a minute. She's actually the current executive director at Farming Hope. And what else about me? I'm from Green Bay, Wisconsin. That's very important. Oh, yeah? Woo! 414, baby! The only other interesting thing about me, I started Farming Hope because I had gotten to live on a permaculture farm and work at a soup kitchen in Central America and El Salvador for several years, and that was the inspiration, even the name that came to Farming Hope. So I'm hoping y'all leave today with some inspiration and information for your own work, your own futures, maybe starting your own community-centric business model or organization or workplace. I think the examples here are incredible, and I hope you can make some new friends that you can come away with asking what you can do. The next few generations are going to be really tough with climate, and I think this community aspect is what we need. We can't just be off in our own little silos taking care of ourselves. It's not safe and it's not fun. We need each other, and I think these 3 leaders are incredible examples of how to do this together. I know it's a business school, but I don't want any of y'all to wake up in 15 years like so poor that all you have is money. So make sure that you're thinking how to continually build truly inclusive, everyone welcome community. Let's start off. Andie, do you want to introduce yourself? I'll ask all 3 of you to describe your business model, how it relates to climate justice, and maybe just a little bit about yourself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Andie Sobrepeña. I'm the current executive director of Farming Hope. I've been with Farming Hope for 4 years now. Farming Hope's a culinary job training program. It helps folks, as Jamie mentioned, facing barriers to employment back into the workforce. Most particularly for us, that's folks with previous incarceration and folks who have been experiencing homelessness. And it's a 12-week program. During that, they're also helping produce meals for the community. We're doing right now about 2,200 meals a week that go back out into the community, so feeding food insecure neighbors across San Francisco through a network of partners, as well as our in-house programs. And what else? Facts. Oh, yes. So part of our work is always working in collaboration with a lot of nonprofits, both referring partners to our program, but also working alongside partners to feed our community. And in that, there's also a coalition that we are a part of that actually Jamie's kind of started when we...
Definitely started.
Because 3 or 4 years ago now, Mayor Breed cut food security funding. She started a food security department under the Human Services Agency funded their jobs for a year, funded RFPs the following year, which are the community proposals, essentially, that folks apply for grant funding for in the city, and then cut them a year after, zero funding moving forward, without even looking at the reporting or looking at any outcomes that have happened. And Jamie and I basically looked through all of the RFPs, pulled all the contact info, and tried to get this group together to advocate for the funding back, which we were successful in doing so that year, as well as the next 3 years. And we're currently still doing all of that. In the meantime, also built this, are continuing to build this vision of what food sovereignty means in San Francisco and what a good food plan should be and can be in our city. As the pandemic showed us, there's no plan whatsoever for food in San Francisco, much less most other cities.
Right.
And a lot of other major metropolitan areas are working on food plans, and we're working on having a community-led approach to it rather than just like a top-down, like the smart people say so, and that's why. It also needs to have community as part of that voice. And we have a food summit coming up April 27 and 28. We're expecting like 300 people. We had our first one last year, 200 people came. So it just shows how much there's an appetite for this conversation to be happening on the community level. The coalition's called the Food and Agriculture Action Coalition Towards Sovereignty, FAACTS, FACTS. And our goal is really just to collaborate with each other and really build the pipeline from BIPOC farmers to transportation to feed our communities in San Francisco and build a marketplace to help support the farmers who are not part of this big ag realm, and then feed our communities in a more sustainable way. And we also do food recovery as in Farming Hope. So one of our pieces of impact is utilizing food that would otherwise go to waste and back into feed our communities in healthy ways, and do some education around how to use whole food from root to tail within that as well.
Yeah, I think Andie and I always see food as like the most approachable solution to climate change because everybody's got to eat. It's such a huge portion of climate change and what's causing it. Oftentimes we forget about food as a solution, but the food waste in particular, the sourcing, those are some of the biggest impactors. Can anyone come to the summit in April, like Cal students or someone in the Bay Area? Yes.
I think the website's not quite up for buying tickets yet, but if you go to faactssf.org, factssf.org, that is, the information's there, and whenever the tickets come up, it might be in the next week or two.
Also, Andie invented the kitchen top knot, so you're welcome, everybody with long hair. You're welcome. Sorry, Adewale. Diandra, would you like to introduce your work?
Sure. Hey, everybody. Good morning. My name is Diandra Marizet. I use she, her pronouns. I'm one of the founders of Intersectional Environmentalist. We've been evolving. I would say initially we were, I guess you could say, a climate justice collective, and we really operated in a way that hoped to shift the narrative of the environmental movement to one that was intersectional. We wanted to make sure that enough people had that language and that terminology to be able to kind of pick up that baton, and we feel like we've done that. If that's language that's new to you, I'm sure there are people in your circle that have heard of it and can teach you about it. Otherwise, I'm happy to as well. And now I think we're evolving more so to a place where we're really focusing on our media identity, leaning into our strength of storytelling and really centering community voices as an eco-media organization that's really amplifying the voices of community-driven solutions and amplifying stories that highlight how much we all belong to each other in the face of really beautiful moments of diversity. And I think that that is something that we're really excited to lean into, especially these next 4 years. Oh, business model. I think I learned the hard way. I was a business major, and I learned the hard way that you totally do not need a super huge team to build a platform with 500,000 followers and to have your message and your impact reach millions and millions and millions of people. I would say over the past 4 years, we've flowed between having 2 people to having almost 20. Every time we've operated under like 3 to 5 people, just being that we are more so media driven, has been just chef's kiss. 3 to 5 people, okay? Because it empowers us to, especially if you enter a field where you're hoping to be more impact oriented, if your business model allows. I think that from the media standpoint, that's really allowed us to be more nimble, especially like everybody's asking me like, are you going to be okay these next 4 years? And I'm like, yes, we're going to be okay because we have prepared for the ebbs and flows of doing impact work. If you want to do impact work, huge industries probably might not promote systems that will allow you to succeed. So being small and nimble, if again, you're in like an industry that allows for that, is the way to go. So that's my 2 cents on the business model.
Thank you. Yeah. That's beautiful. Adewale?
That's great. Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. Adewale, OgunBadejo. We always say pronouns are good alternatives, but pronouns he, him. I'm the VP of Workforce Development for Grid Alternatives. I've been with the organization now for 15 years. And we are really a grassroots organization, or we were at one point. We're now at well over 500 people as an organization. But we started right here in Oakland. And our co-founders really wanted to see how they could use clean energy technologies to impact communities. So our mission is really to use community-powered solutions to advance environmental and economic justice. And we really want to see an equitable and just transition to clean energy that includes everyone. So a lot of times the communities that we serve are last to the clean energy industry. You know, they're the last to be able to tap into transitional technologies. So we've been working for the last 20 years. We were founded in 2001 and started doing projects in 2004. But we've been, for the last 20 years, installing solar for families in underserved communities. And our systems have always been at no cost to the families that we serve. So they get all of the environmental and economic benefits without the cost. Because as you know, a lot of underserved communities are typically the most face the heaviest burdens from our use of fossil fuels. So, you know, one side of the work we do is actually installing solar technologies, and since then we've also moved into clean mobility. But the other side is, you know, it's beautiful that these communities benefit from the environmental aspects of clean energy, but it would be a travesty if they did not also benefit from the economic aspects of the transition to clean energy. There's billions of dollars worldwide that are being invested in clean energy. And if we don't make sure that these same communities also benefit economically, then we're missing the mark. So I am on the workforce development side of the work we do, and it's kept me motivated for the last 15 years in ways that I could never imagine. There's always a new challenge the next year, and you can see the impact, the direct impact it has on people's lives. So I think a very holistic approach to the implementation of clean energy technologies.
I wanted to follow up by asking everybody why you do this work. It can feel sometimes like we're working really hard in our little corner and then the world is pushing things backwards, and that can be exhausting. And maybe there's a time that was really difficult or a turning point where you really had to decide to keep going. If there's any stories you want to tell, or just generally, why do you do this work? Diandra, would you like to go first?
Yeah, I can go first. I think that I could answer that question differently every day. Mm-hmm. But today, I think what that's sparking for me is related to my first career before this, which was working in the fashion industry. I graduated from business school, went and worked in the fashion industry, and became so quickly disenchanted by all the things I learned about supply chains, womp womp. And so I left the industry, still very much love and admire all my friends who have a very similar entrepreneurial, but very like activism oriented spirit and are fighting that fight within the industry. Love that. But I think the reason why I do what I do, I ended up quitting the fashion industry and now run this organization because I think that the disenchantment came from the realization that industry is predicated on disconnection. So I went into the fashion industry dreaming about all the cultural stories I would learn, about how different motifs are inspired by different fruits and different trees and different patterns that people have built really sacred relationships with when it comes to land and their understanding of local ecology and just how they thrive. And certainly in the fashion industry, you do find people that are really passionate and will tell you those stories and authors that will write about those stories. But being a business major, I worked on the trend analytics side. I was doing buying. So I was kind of at the intersection of like trend analytics, finance, marketing, comms, design, styling. That's a lot of different incentives. So, in that little mix. And so I think my disenchantment was also an active decision to take what I bared witness to, which was all these different incentives feeling so disconnected from a really critical, important story, which is that ultimately we create so that we can honor creation. We, like people, I think that in a very like anti-capitalistic society, which obviously like vibes, but when you're in like a community that really is talking about like anti-capitalist, la 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 la, something that gets lost in that is the little Etsy shop owners or the small business owners that are like, wait, but I love creating things and offering things to people. And yes, that means like I might sell it so that I can continue to create these things. We're meant to create for each other. We are meant to be entrepreneurial beings. We are meant to build businesses and spaces that people want to enjoy and garments that people want to honor their stories with and feel connected to. And so that's ultimately why I do what I do. I wanted to work in fashion, but because we live in the world that we live in, I more so wanted to address the disconnect we feel with the way that we create.
That's beautiful. But why storytelling now? Like, what have you found the power to be in that as your day job?
Yeah, I think that storytelling, something I've realized, especially as I reflect back on my academic experience, which was not that long ago. Y'all are making me want to go back to school. No, when I reflect back on my academic experience, I think I have learned to appreciate that academic spaces can do a really beautiful job of analyzing and preserving relationship to land, history, but only storytelling can actually weave morality into the fabric of society.
Right.
And that's oftentimes why industries target our ability to tell stories. You said you're a drummer, right?
We used to be, yeah.
You're a drummer. He's a drummer. Everybody affirm after this that he's a drummer. So once a drummer, always a drummer. So if I may, I learned when I've done a lot of study as somebody who comes from lands that are right along the Texas-Mexico border. That's where my ancestry is from. And I've learned so much about just like the Spanish conquest of Mesoamerica, and that's how it's like presented to us in school, la la la. And I learned actually that one of the ways that the conquistadors succeeded, which is kind of just a blueprint for colonization anywhere, the first people that they target are the effective storytellers. So on November 8th, I remember because that's my birthday, the conquistadors like entered Tenochtitlan, which is modern day Mexico City. And even though it was like a long process and there was a lot of engagement like around this and prior, the first people, when like the actual biggest battle that kind of solidified the conquest, when that happened, the first people they took out were the drummers, strategically. And so now you think about, because drummers, you know, they keep the beat, right? If you walk into a bar and you order a beer, and then you hear the song come on, Sweet Caroline, everybody's like, bum, bum, bum. Yeah, exactly, right? So that's the power of storytelling. Like, you don't know this person next to you, but y'all are bum, bum, bum. Like, that is, it's storytelling is the key to belonging. It's the key to community resilience. And so that's why storytellers are taken out first. And yeah, I think that, I hope that answers your question. I think that storytelling is so, so critical, and that's why industries often try to make new stories and erase the stories that actually empower us, because that's what binds us as people and makes us more powerful.
That's so beautiful. I hope everybody got to see your fireside yesterday. I could just listen to you for hours. I think Diandra's showing us the power of storytelling in each of our workplaces, and I hope that everybody takes that away, that telling the story of how we're impacting climate is maybe as important as doing the work itself. You've got to do both. Thank you, Diandra. Adewale, do you want to talk about why grid alternatives? What keeps you doing it?
Yeah, that's a great question. First of all, I love what you said about storytelling. It was very powerful. But yeah, I never imagined myself anywhere for 15 years, to be honest with you. But there was always something new to do every year. There was always a new challenge, a new way to impact community. And I think just being able to support people trying to move and get to where they're trying to go in life. One thing you see in underserved communities is lack of access, lack of opportunity. And that creates so many problems for the individuals from the communities we serve. A lot of people have gotten in trouble because they didn't have opportunity, because they didn't have access. I can remember being young and just being out there because I had no direction. And I'm fortunate that I didn't fall victim to, some of the things that could have happened. So when I saw, clean energy, and I understood that this is where the world is going. This is where the world needs to go, right? That we have to change the way we do things. And this was just a massive opportunity. I said, this is something we can use in our local communities, to really move community forward. And if we could address it through workforce development initiatives and open doors of access, then we might be onto something, and we were onto something, and I saw a lot of lives changed as a result of building out a very what's now robust workforce development program. When we started, we were like Habitat for Humanity, and people just used to come out and volunteer, and some people would stay with us for a week or two, some would stay for 3-4 months, some people would stay around with us for a year. But when they had enough confidence, they would move into working for solar companies. And now, after doing this work for 15 years, you begin to see people coming back, and how their lives have changed. And some of them come back because they want to hire other people because they felt like this is where they got their start from. So we've built a whole ecosystem, a whole community of people that got their start at grid alternatives. And, you can find them all over California and really all over the country. We have a fellowship program called Solar Core Fellowship, and it's a 11-month fellowship, and you can work in one of our departments, whether it's outreach, workforce development, project management, whatever the case. And we get people from all kind of walks of lives, all ages, all different levels of their professional careers. I remember we had a young lady probably about 8 or 9 years ago now. She came through our program, and she had just graduated from the university. So she came, and she was almost like a program coordinator with us. She did her year, and then I remember her looking for opportunities, and she started working with a couple of local solar companies, and then she finally found her groove with this upstart company called Freedom Forever. And, fast forward to 4 or 5 years later, Freedom Forever is like one of the larger mid-level solar companies in the country. They've expanded probably to 20 plus states, and they have, I think, close to 1,000 employees. When she started there, I think they were only in Marietta, California, which is down south, and they had about 30 people, She's the vice president of operations today, So to me, that's amazing, because you never would have saw it when she was doing her year, But it was that opportunity, the fact that door was open for her, and it changed her life in a way that I'm not even sure she imagined. So I've seen that so many times, and now I think in my role as a vice president, I've been in this role for about 2.5 years now. Before that, I worked in LA for about 12 years. I get to do it nationally, and that's very exciting. We're building out programs where we're going into communities across the country. Last year, we were in Nashville, Tennessee, and we were providing solar training in Nashville, Tennessee, which is something I never could have imagined. I went to high school in Louisville back in the 90s, not to thank myself, but, I never would have thought of clean energy in the South. So to be doing solar in Nashville, Tennessee, and training people there for green careers, for me, that was like full circle, So I think as we look at what is the opportunity to scale this work nationwide and prepare local communities to step into the clean energy industry, that's going to keep me around for another couple of years. So
glad to hear.
People also don't talk about how solar's big in the South.
Oh,
But
yeah.
that's not the story they want you to know, though.
They don't want you to know that.
It's big in the South.
Yeah, they're still pushing clean coal in the South. So.
Isn't Texas the biggest solar or second biggest solar state?
Last year.
That's right, but they won't tell you that.
Yeah, they pretend it's not.
We'll be training in Texas. We'll be training in Houston in May. So
that's great.
Yeah, excited.
The sun is free. Andie, why do you do this? I know how much your job sucks because I did it. Why on earth do you do it?
I think something that both Adewale and Diandra were saying was that I keep hearing, and I think anyone in the nonprofit world or doing this community-driven work talks about, is the need to connect. And that is such a huge part of the nature of being human. For me, I'm Filipino. I moved to San Francisco when I was 11. Born in the Philippines, so I'm half here, half there. Whatever, born not raised not born. I don't know. But being Filipino, food is like a huge part of when my family talks to each other. We barely talk to each other throughout the day. And then we come to the dinner table. I'm one of 7 kids, so you can imagine we all have different personalities. We're all doing our own thing. Food is the only connecting point that we have in our family for a long time. Now it's a little different, but when we were kids, we didn't talk to each other. And in that, I think the importance of food for everybody is clear, right? We all eat, everybody eats. It's part of how we survive. But one thing that I realized I ran a restaurant, a multi-restaurant group for 10 years prior to joining Farming Hope. The pandemic happened. That went away. Actually, it didn't go away. It's still there, but it's not doing great. It's in the financial district, but you can imagine what that looks like. But having grown up working in restaurants, I kind of saw this problem where I was like, why is management treating people like just utter trash? Like, why are nobody asks us if we can cover shifts. We just are expected to do it. And then we get written up if we don't. This literally happened to me. If we don't show up because your manager didn't tell you have a new shift you've never been trained for, and then you're just written up because they mismanaged you. That's
happened to me too.
Up. Yeah. So you're just like, I was just like, okay, if I ever, my parents were like, let's open a cafe one day. And I was like, okay, sure. So I really used all these experiences and worked in different restaurants and was like, okay, what would it look like if I were to run a business? And how would I shift what restaurant management is? And then while we were building our business, I found out about Farming Hope, and I was like, one day I'm going to reach out to them and say, I would like to be an employment partner. And look at what I've done to prepare for that. And the pandemic happened, lost my job, and then this job opened up, and I was like, excuse me, this is mine, thank you. And really being able to double down on this belief that everybody should have an opportunity to work and make a livelihood, not just in the restaurant industry, and be able to change and be part of a conversation around what that looks like, and talking to other restaurant businesses and food businesses who are Like, how does, we're post Me Too, post like chef cancellation and kind of restaurant culture wrestling with itself, and how the pandemic has affected how we all look at that work and the service industry as a whole. Coming out of that, now it's about like, okay, what top-down changes do you need to make culturally to really build better businesses that actually attract people who want to stay there longer, and not just be like, oh, this is just a job while I go to my actual future career. Because there's beauty in the restaurant industry, that connection that you really want, that everybody wants, and being able to be part of building that connection for restaurant goers and people coming into your space is why a lot of people stay in that industry. And being able to do that for us, for families who our in-house programs are feeding folks who are, families particularly, who are food and housing insecure. So building this table where parents who they all live in like one bedroom room potentially with no kitchen, and being able to build a table where they can connect with their kids in the way that I've done with my family, and the importance of that connection, and being able to build memories for kids that are like, oh, we used to go to this restaurant all the time, and it's this beautiful place that they get to hang out with their friends and make new friends and build the village of families that they get to, be raised next to each other. It's beautiful. And then also on the other side of that, being able to train people to do this work and feel like they have purpose again, and feel like they have a reason to kind of continue on their journey toward sobriety, or toward stability, or toward like really getting out of the hole that they're in. That full circle piece is literally like, I don't have to look at the news. I do, because it impacts my work, but and the future of the world. But I can also just be like, every single day, my team and I put our heads down. We make impact every day and figure out how to continue to do this better and how to continue to grow our programs, and that keeps me going every day.
There's your belonging and community. Yeah, Andie's also built a really beautiful network of restaurateurs and cooks around San Francisco as like hiring partners for Farming Hope, and has done a lot of teaching around like truly inclusive hiring. There's inclusivity in name only, and then there's like actuality. And I'm really proud of all you've built in that.
Can I add to that really quick before we move on to that? Yeah, I just want to, I think that the work you're doing is so important. And I think that I wanted to just paint a picture of the realities of what happens when that work is not present. So I come from Spring, Texas. It's a really small town. And anybody from like the Houston-ish area? No? Okay, that's all right.
Well, small sample size.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I should have asked yesterday. But anyway, so I'm from a really small town just outside of Houston, Texas, and from an even smaller neighboring town where it was like just horses growing up. And over time, I just like moving in and out and like visiting family, and over the past, X many decades, I've seen corporate colonialism completely take over. So my sister and my brother-in-law and their kids, their idea of going out to eat is limited. Like their exposure and their capacity to connect with food is limited strictly to chains. And I'm not even talking like nice ones. I'm talking like fast food, strictly Starbucks. That's their only coffee. So when I'm like, boycott Starbucks, they're like, what? That's the only coffee we got. And when I'm like, oh my gosh, McDonald's, this, and that. They're like, but that's the only place we can go. So yeah, I think that protecting and innovating for new systems that protect people's ability to thrive in food systems, and also just communal care systems around food, is so, so critical, because a lot of us probably come from small towns where our families are starting to see the impacts of corporate colonialism.
So what do we do for workers in that reality of corporate colonialism? Like how do we make jobs available that are more family supporting, that are contributing to personal and community health? I think that phrase is so powerful, corporate colonialism. Like, corporations are the new nation states in terms of that colonialism. But in our little corners, maybe Adewale, if you want to start, like, what does opening up the green workforce so that folks who have barriers to employment are hired first and not last, like, what does that actually look like?
That's a great question. I mean, one thing we try to call for a lot is industry accountability.
That's great.
And we're one of the organizations that, not to be watchdogs, but definitely to let you know that we're watching you.
Great.
You know?
I think that's a watchdog.
Yeah, it's a watchdog, you know. But I think that, you know, when you're out there doing the work and on the ground every day, you know, you look at, for example, the Inflation Reduction Act and the Solar for All funds, and, you know, these are hundreds of billions of dollars that are supposed to be invested, and a lot of those investments are supposed to go into underserved communities. What kind of companies are coming in and are going to be doing those projects? You know, and the last administration tried to put a lot of language in place, like Justice 40, to ensure that the benefits were going specifically to these underserved communities. But it's not just the dollars getting to the communities in terms of like the implementation of the projects, but who's doing those projects. You know, so when you have put those community benefits in place, what do they look like? Because a lot of times it can just be check the box, right? So are you getting companies that are checking the box to get the contract, or are you getting companies that truly care about the communities that they're serving? You know, that's very, very important when you design community benefits agreements and things like that. You know, so you need to be aware of what's coming into your community, who's doing the work, and then you have to make sure that you're training up a workforce that's prepared, because one of the excuses could be there's no talent in the communities. That's what they'll tell you a lot of times. So you have to make sure that you're building up that talent. And then you're identifying the companies and giving them an incentive to work with local communities. Like, those are the communities that the contractors that should be getting the contracts are the ones who really have a community investment at heart, and they don't want to just check the box. So I think thinking of things holistically, working with like local government, working with the community-based organizations, you know, how can we all work together? There's so many community-based organizations that are doing the work that we don't need to reinvent the wheel. One of the models we have is that when we go to a place like Houston, or we're in Albuquerque, New Mexico right now, we're going to work with community, you know, in the spirit of collaboration. There's grassroots organizations that have been doing the work since the very beginning of time. We're great at technical training. We're not the ones that are doing the soft skills. We're not addressing the barriers to employment. So identify those organizations, and I think there's strength in numbers. You know, so once you get like the community together, you can have a bigger impact on who's coming in your community, you know, and who's doing business in your community. And you can have a greater chance of making sure that those dollars recirculate within your community before they leave the community. So I definitely think that's one of the ways. And then one thing that we're doing now, which I'm very excited about, is we just started a contractor services arm. In light of all the dollars that are coming into the community for the Inflation Reduction Act, it's one thing to teach people how to be workers. It's another thing to support that entrepreneurial spirit in these same communities. We have a lot of moms and pop shops that might be doing just some general contracting work. They might be some electricians and want to get into the clean energy space. I mean, you can install electric vehicles, you can do solar, service panel upgrades, a lot of different opportunities that contractors can tap into, but they also have barriers to building their businesses. So we are looking to work with other organizations to address these barriers. There's a great organization in LA, and their executive directors from LISC. It's called the Center by Lendistry. But they provide financial products and services to small businesses. So we've partnered with them so that they can work with contractors, teach them about, you know, capital, how to access capital, how to tap into the bidding process, what does procurement look like, you know. So we wrap them as a community with the services they need, then we can plug them into the contracting opportunities so that they can be competitive in a way that they could not be before. So you have to be active if you want to make sure that you know, those that need priority get priority. Yeah. Because companies aren't just going to do it because you told them to. It's not going to happen. They'll check the box, But at the end of the day, you won't see the results. So you've got to have, you have creative solutions.
Well, and it's such an obscene lie, the lack of talent thing that we hear so often.
Yeah.
Like the work Andie and I do and have done, like the best, hardest working colleagues I've ever had were like the lifers and the former homeless dudes.
I agree.
Who were just personally so interesting and fun to work with. Talk about storytelling. But like, truly, truly brilliant, very entrepreneurial. And yeah, I don't know, maybe, I think that's why we've done culinary as the job training focus, because that's an industry that typically, historically, does sort of welcome anybody in, even if you have a criminal record, et cetera. And yeah, I'm wondering if you can talk, Andie, about like why or what, like on Adewale's topic, what we can do so that more workers are hired first in this green jobs growth as opposed to last, who have those barriers.
Yeah, I think something that you were saying is collaboration. As I mentioned earlier, collaboration is such a huge part of the work that Farming Hope does, but also advocacy. Yeah. Also, to your point, is such a huge part in making the point that like there are better ways to do things. We definitely haven't cracked the code yet, but I think we've been really successful, as I mentioned, with the food security advocacy on the city level, and like really getting in there and understanding what your how the city works, because you have to understand the system in order to break it. And work with it, and then be like push. You know, like education of your leadership, city and town or state leadership even, is also really important, because if they don't understand your point, they're not going to know it, period, if it's not even on their radar. So making sure that there's continued education, nonprofits and community driven work is going to be here long after any of the administration that's currently having their terms. So that work is continuous. We just had a administration shift in San Francisco, and we have to re-educate supervisors, mayor and their teams on what the issue is around food security. So advocacy and collaboration and doing work together, and not replicating, but working together to uplift each other and uplift the communities together.
Sounds like telling stories. Okay, last question. So I've been feeling disappointed. It seems like whatever the opposition is in this world is disunified, siloed, tired, scared. How can we, as a counterweight, the social, the civic, the philanthropic sectors, be more united and unified? Maybe you have someone you look up to who's been a real leader, a voice, in moments of rushing back toward fossil fuels or pretending that we can erase diversity from the world and our vocabulary. So maybe a hero you have, or an organization you look up to, or a way that you're doing through your work that our collective industries can be unified. Diandra, you're nodding, so I'm going to ask you to go first. Do you have an answer to this question to get me out of my sadness?
Yes, I do. I think that a concept I've been chewing on lately that I think is probably going to be informing my work this next year is seasonal storytelling. So when I think about all of the stories that we have lost connection to, and how they are stories that help bind us to our connection to land, and then I reflect on everything I've learned in history about how people traditionally wove those stories into the fabric of society, it was always through consistent, persistent annual traditions. Yeah. It's through, if you're like religious, maybe it's like Christmas, if you're like Hanukkah, or if you are very like rooted in just like connection to land, maybe it's something like Dia de Muertos. I touched on that a little bit yesterday. Like it could be holidays, or maybe just you and your family are like, we love this thing that happens on our farm every spring, and the family comes over, la la la. Whatever it is, it could be potlucks, or it could be some ancestral tradition. But gathering people around an idea or a concept that is communal storytelling. And I think that we sometimes have like a little bit of a narrow lens on like, okay, if I heard a story once, okay, it had its impact, and repeating it feels like a little silly. But that is how our ancestors thrived, was making sure that not only did we, when we were young, hear the story once, but that we knew the importance of growing up and being stewards of that story. So even if it makes you feel a little silly to repeat and make sure that your nieces and your nephews and your uncles and everybody and your friends hear the story every year, whatever the story is, I think that is really what it sends me onto like an ancestral timeline where I'm like, I am stewarding this story for my lineage going backward and my lineage going forward. And that really, to me, grounds me in the fact that these next 4 years are but a mere moment in time in my ancestral timeline.
Yeah, reminds us what we're part of. Yeah, that's so beautiful. Andie, how do we unify? You're the queen of collective action.
I too sometimes feel hopeless.
Oh!
But I think there's a lot of hope in the fact that there are to me the like youth of today. I'm not young.
You're youthful.
Youthful.
Yeah.
Different. But it really brings me hope that there is an entire generation of people who just know a lot better than our current crazy white male administration and their followers, who will really shift where the world goes from here. Unfortunately, it's going to take time. It's going to take people dying off, but for better or worse. But I think that's what gives me hope, and really and like with media and everybody's information, everyone's fingertips, there's just so much more knowledge across the world, literally, that there is no way but up from here, because you cannot hide from the truth that the climate is at stake, the world is at stake. We all want to stay connected. We all want to uplift each other, but like they're saying, don't do that up top and destroying our community focus. So that's what gives me hope, is there are generations of more informed people coming to save the world.
I love it, including your son-in-law.
Including my almost 11-month-old son. So if I'm looking rumpled today, that's why.
You look rumpled. I've seen you so much rumplier, but...
And you.
Yeah, for real, though. My God, yeah. Adewale, you want to close this out? Like, how do we unify?
Yeah, I think understanding the humanity that we each have, and I think respecting that humanity and understanding, like, it's okay to be different. There's nothing wrong. We should celebrate our differences.
Amen.
There's nothing wrong with multiculturalism, A lot of that is under attack right now, and I think people forget, some people don't know, the history of how we got here. Right. The history of why we need to have equity, inclusion, and diversity, or DEI, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. Look
at the history of America. Look at redlining. Look at the Homestead Act and how the people who got land from the Homestead Act, how they benefited, and look at which people didn't benefit. So when you talk about inclusion, I think that we need to understand the humanity and get back to humanity. Unfortunately, all that is under attack. So I think, as Andie said, there's a need for those of us that believe in humanity to come together and bring all of our resources. And I think you do that at the local level, local communities, and then you do it at the regional level, you do it at the state level, then you do it nationally, and you do it globally. I learned a long time ago that the quickest way to affect change is at the local level.
Yeah.
So you build a bunch of local movements, and then you unify, and then you grow out from there. But I think it starts with really looking at the humanity of people. There was a time where we talked about the African American community, and they recycle every day. You see people walking up and down the street with 10 bags on a shopping cart, 10 huge bags, and they're going to recycle. But it's the opportunity to turn that into a business. You know what I'm saying? But those are people trying to just get it done every day. You know what I'm saying? So looking at the humanity of the communities that we come from and figuring out how to get together and not be reliant on systems that have no interest in including us, but rather just extracting everything they can and moving on. So
that's beautiful.
Yeah.
I keep hearing throughout this hour, small is big. So don't forget that. Small is powerful. 30 seconds. We're going to go to question and answer, but 30 seconds for Farming Hope, Intersectional Environmentalist, and Grid Alternatives. Can you tell us how we can get involved in your work? Or if you have a request for everyone.
farminghope.org. We have volunteer opportunities. We have dinners coming up. Facts, as I mentioned earlier, Food Summit, April 27, 28, or 28, 29. Check that on the website. Yeah. And also start your own amazing, beautiful, environmental and sustainable businesses that think about the community and how to uplift them. That's what we need to do.
Ow!
I love that. Okay, so a couple things. One, if you need some hope right now, go follow our podcast on Spotify, The Joy Report. It is one of the only climate optimism focused podcasts through an intersectional lens that is out there. That's why we made it. So please go follow The Joy Report. Also, we're launching on Substack very soon. So please follow us on Substack. I mean, it's technically live, but we just haven't put anything out there just yet. So be the first to see. Follow us on Substack. And then lastly, for you personally, I gave this little anecdote yesterday, or this call to action yesterday. I think everyone should go home after this, or even just like step outside and call, text, email the oldest living person in your family and ask them for a story that they used to just hear all the time that doesn't get talked about anymore. Ask them for a story that they just haven't told you. Collect stories before you can't. That's me.
I think gridalternatives.org, www.gridalternatives.org.
World Wide Web.
Yeah. You can learn about the organization. There's a lot of things going on with Grid Alternatives all the time. And we're always growing and looking for new opportunities. So I think, if there's an opportunity to connect, please do. You can reach out to me or whoever. I'll plug you into the right person. We also have a fellowship program for anybody looking for some fellowship opportunities. And I think, like has been said, find a local organization and get involved. I never thought I'd be in this space, to be honest with you. And 15 years later, I'm still here and I still love it. I wake up excited to go get the work done. So you can make a living for yourself and also invest in community. And it doesn't matter if it's with an organization like GRID or any other great organization, but there are a lot of great organizations doing the work that need great people. So go find something to get involved in.
Join in. Round of applause for our three panelists. Thank you, guys. I think we only have time for one or two questions. I don't want to keep you all from lunch. So, Sophia, are there any great questions from the audience?
There's a bunch of great questions. I know we have a smaller group, but it's one that is very engaged and has asked so many questions. So thank you all. I would love to start with one that I think would be good for Diandra, but I welcome anyone to answer it. There's a phrase we've heard these last couple of days in a lot of different panels that any job or every job can be a sustainability job. How can we make every job a storytelling job?
Oh.
I love that. Who wrote that question? Wow.
Oh, Wisconsin!
Snaps to you. Okay. I think that going back to the idea of disconnection, I think that any job that has been siloed away from a story has been done so intentionally.
Yeah.
So finding a way to reclaim that story. So if you work in a job where you're like, oh, storytelling's not relevant to my job, I'm like, girl, it's been made intentionally disconnected from the story. So how can you make it a storytelling job by finding out first why it was disconnected from the story to begin with?
That's beautiful.
I will also say, if you lead a business or part of a business, especially leading a business, you are storytelling all the time to tell the story about your business. So
Yeah.
whether or not, or even if you're working at a business, right? Sales is storytelling. There's literally every job is storytelling, and I don't know how to detach those two even.
That's beautiful.
I'll also add just like the less obvious example that like I feel like the people that come to me the most and they're like, oh, my job has nothing to do with like la 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 la, or like maybe the people in like logistics, supply chain, accounting, finance, legal, and but I can't tell you how many beautiful conversations I've had with people that are like, I wish our legal systems or our finance systems or invoicing systems worked differently. And I see how they're propped up to really support huge corporations that can handle 90 to 180 day invoice turnarounds, whereas small grassroots organizations, they need to be paid in like 14 days for all the labor they've been doing for the past 6 months for you. And that's a story, right, that accountants are often like disconnected from, for example. Yeah.
Such a good example. Last question?
Okay, yeah, we have time for one more question. We've talked a lot about work at kind of the local level, and there's a tendency to see scale and impact as being at odds. What do you think about this tension? Have you seen some of these challenges in sustaining community-driven climate solutions while maintaining that deep local engagement and equity? Or do you think this tension is a bit of a misconception or a story that's not quite true?
Could you start, Adewale? Because GRID is a huge organization. I mean, wasn't your Solar for All grant in the B billions?
It wasn't billions, I wish, but it was about 300 million.
Okay, that's still big.
Yeah, it's still decent.
So you've got the scale and the impact. Maybe you can start.
Yeah, it's funny. When I started at Grid Alternatives, we were like 35, 40 people. And we were scrappy and grassrootsy. And I think we're still like that.
Yeah.
You know? I think staying true to your mission and your values is key. You know, our co-founders, I remember when we first started growing, like when we were approaching 100, we felt like that was huge. Mm-hmm. They said what was going to bind us was our identity, you know, and sticking to our cultural values as an organization. So we do a lot of work internally. We have affinity groups, and that's counted as actual company time. You know, so every affinity group meets for an hour, you know, once or twice a month. You know, we have the tough conversations internally as an organization. So culture is centered. We are centered around EID. And we're centered at looking at ourselves as an organization before we go out into the community and, you know, tell the community what it is we think they need, you know. So I think as we continue to expand, we have an affiliate model, but each affiliate has their own identity, you know, and we centralize where we need to centralize, but we also leave it open for a degree of autonomy because, you know, what's needed here in Oakland is going to be different from the needs of Fresno. And you can't have a centralized approach from our headquarters here and telling, you know, what they need to be doing in D.C. You know, so you need people on the ground. We recently just launched in Puerto Rico last year, workforce development. And all the trainers in Puerto Rico are from Puerto Rico. So it's not like we landed a bunch of people that are not from Puerto Rico to go and tell Puerto Ricans what they need to be doing and, you know, and what's important. So I think keeping that grassroots energy, that grassroots attitude, that scrappiness, and always keeping your ear to the beat of the local community, like you were saying with the drums. Everything's in the beat, you know, so keeping your ears to the beat of local communities and letting the community tell you what it is you need. Yeah.
That's beautiful. Diandra, do you want to close this? Because your impact is quite scaled, the followers, the readership, the listenership, and yet you've kept that depth, and you even opened talking about a small team and like accomplishing a lot with essentially a little. So how would you answer that question?
Yeah, I think that something that kind of mirrors what you were saying as well, is that we built something to put tools in other people's hands, not make people reliant on what we've built. And I think that that really is the key. Now, to be honest, if I really wanted to become some like filthy rich person, would I have, if I wanted to be poor at the end of my life and only have money,
exactly,
right? If that's what I was going for, then I would have been like, oh, trademark, no one can use this language but us, and curriculum, and it cost $5,000, and like all these things. Yeah, like the business model would have looked different. The thing is that we were perfectly happy and still are content nourishing our team with a business model that is sustainable for us, and at the same time, because we can't be asking people to like sacrifice themselves, right? Like, you deserve to be nourished for the things that you create.
Yes.
And we also are not building an extractive system that makes people reliant on us and strips people of their own capacity to build their own story. So we are merely sharing tools to empower community, and as generations continue to rise, they will always need that, right? So that is a regenerative, that it's very nurturing and regenerative in that way. And so similarly to what you were saying, there's always going to be new people entering the workforce that need to be empowered to enter these fields, especially as technology evolves. So do not listen to anybody that is like dreaming of becoming Jeff Bezos one day. Convince you. Do not let them convince you that you cannot do both, because you can.
All right. Round of applause for everybody. Thank you, Diandra. Thank you, Andie and Adewale. We'll stick around if y'all have quick questions. If you want to talk, if you're in the Bay, make sure you've learned from Andie about farming hope and facts. Make sure to follow Intersectional Environmentalist and look up Grid's work, especially as you might be doing volunteering in the future again, right, Adewale? Yeah. And then if you want to talk green jobs training on the national scale, talk to me about REDF and our work. We do have an MBA program as well. So thank
Jamie,
you guys.
if I could talk about that real quick.
Yeah.
REDF came and did technical assistance for us the first time back in 2018. And it really changed what workforce development looks like at our organization. They taught us about how to run a social enterprise, and that was so key. Because in order for workforce to be sustainable, we had to have a revenue model, but we didn't know what that looked like until we started to engage with REDF, and they brought in a Faber Fellow.
Yep, that's the MBA program.
Faber Fellow. We had a Faber Fellow, and the amount of just work they did for us and the learning that happened, I think, is one of the main reasons that we have such a successful workforce development program today.
Yeah,
so
I hope you see yourselves in this work, because it was MBA interns that worked with both Grid and Farming Hope in building up that business model. So I'll let everybody go to lunch, and we'll be around. Thank you.
Thank you.